Hilchos Tumas Meis Perek Arba Asar, the laws of corpse impurity, chapter 14. This is going to be a very interesting topic today and tomorrow that picks up on yesterday's issue of the oihel. We're talking about covering. You have a corpse and there are other things next to it. If you have a covering over it that meets the criteria, so the Tumas spreads to everywhere under the covering. At the same time, the Tumah also gets blocked. Now it cannot go past the covering. At the end of yesterday's chapter, the Rambam mentioned one exception. There is a time where you have a structure or a covering which typically would block, but if there's a hole that's the size of 1 tefach by 1 tefach, then the Tumah is able to escape. That's the amount in which Tumah is able to escape to the next room or to the outside. And that's going to be the topic of today's chapter and tomorrow's chapter, and also the next couple of days as well, the laws of escaping Tumah. Tumah that's in a room, but because there's a hole large enough to let it out, it now influences things that are outside that room. And what we're going to see today is 3 types of windows, 3 types of openings in walls. One is called ma'or, or le'ora, which basically means a hole you made in a wall for light. These could be smaller, because all you need is a small hole to let in the light. Remember, we're talking about, this is like the time of Chazal, that era windows. Not like today where you have a window, you dig out a little hole and you put a pane. They used to have thick walls, right? Their structures were made out of thick walls, and they'd actually make openings. They didn't have glass panes. It was just an opening in the wall. That was a window. So if you made it for light, you would keep it small. The second type of window is what's called for tashmish. That means for use. Today we don't really know this, again, because our windows are different. But they used to have, again, thick areas. You could literally put stuff there. You could put plates there, you could put a wallet there, you could put a bag there, you could use it. You use the windowsill. In order for that window to be called a window, it has to be bigger. The third type of window is what's called me'atzmo. It's an opening that happens by itself, not because you made it. Natural circumstance, something else came in and caused the wall to open. For that window to be considered a halachic window, it has to be even bigger. But the chapter today is all about these windows, these openings. Openings in a wall, how big does an opening have to be to let the Tumah out to the next room? It says that Rambam halacha aleph, ein Tumah nichneses le'oihel. Tumah, impurity, cannot enter a space that's covered, v'lo yoytza mimenu, nor can it leave that space, bepachis mitefach al tefach, in a space that's less than 1 handbreadth by 1 handbreadth. The Rambam is beginning to talk about this one in the middle. The basic criteria is the hole has to be 1 handbreadth by 1 handbreadth. Ketzad, what is an example of this? Chaloin shebein bayis lebayis. You have a window, an opening between, the Rambam calls it 2 homes, but it's basically 2 rooms. Okay, 2 rooms in a home. Oy shebein bayis la'aliyah, or between the first story and the second story. You have a skylight. And now, so let's say there's, here in this picture, there's corpse flesh in one of the rooms. So the Rambam says, Im yesh by tefach al tefach meruba, if the opening is 1 handbreadth by 1 handbreadth square, v'hoysa tuma be'achas mehen, or be'echad mehen, and there was a source of impurity in one of the rooms, habayis hasheni tameh, the tuma escapes through this window. First of all, it fills up this room. Of course, this room is impure. But it also goes through the window, and now whatever is in here is also going to be impure. Ein bachalein peseach tefach, but if the window does not have an opening of a tefach, ein hatuma yetza mimenu, v'lei nichneses la'oyel hasheni. So the corpse flesh, the tumah stays in here, it cannot leave, and therefore it cannot come in to the next room. Says that Rambam bamed dvarim amurim, when am I saying that this size is correct? 1 handbreadth by 1 handbreadth. Bechaloin she'asa oisei ha'adam letashmish. If it's the regular, the classic window, a window which is made for use. You want to put your stuff down on this window. You want to make use of it in your everyday. But if it's a window which a person made for light, so that the light can come in, the amount for this window is like a small coin. And the commentaries say it's 1/3 of a tefach by 1/3 of a tefach. So much, much smaller relative to 1 handbreadth by 1 handbreadth. It's only 1/3 of a handbreadth by 1/3 of a handbreadth. And already there, Tumah will go out. Now the thing is, as the Rambam is going to say in a moment, such a window for light cannot exist between 2 rooms. A window for light you only make to the outside. So what kind of case could there be where it matters if the tumah leaves the house or not? What do you care? Once the tumah leaves the house, it's out in the open air. So the Rambam gives an example as follows. Ketzad hoisa tumah babayis. Let's consider this case, okay? We're looking here now from the outside. Here are these windows. Past that is a house. The person inside the house made these windows for light. So the Rambam says, hoisa tumah babayis. If there's a source of impurity in the home, some corpse flesh in the home, comes a person and leans against this window made for light. So now he's kind of forming an extension of the covering of this window. That's a case where it would matter if the window is big enough. Or you put a utensil into this small window. It's very small, but you put a small needle or something inside there. Or you put up, not a permanent one, we'll see about that soon, but a temporary covering that extends out of this window. Nitma kol sheba'ayel. So now everything under this awning, let's say, will become impure. If the window is the right size of a small coin, a third of a tefach by a third of a tefach. Shahatuma yaitzalei. Because the tumah goes out in that way. That's the ramification of it. This person here, if he leans against the window, will become impure. These utensils here, if the window is big enough, they'll become impure. And now that I'm clarifies what I said before, you have to know that a window which is made for light, hu she'ein alav tikra, is always a case where there's no roof over the next room. Elagoli hu lashemesh, it has to be open to the sun. Otherwise, it's not a window made for light. Light only comes from the outside. Halacha beis, the third category of window, the biggest one. Chaloin hanasa shalei bidei adam. You have a window which is made, or an opening in the wall which is made. By the way, the word chaloin, why is in Hebrew the word chaloin for window? Because it's halal. Halal means empty space. That's how we know we're talking about the ancient windows, where it wasn't a window with a window pane. It was just an opening. So you have a chaloin hanasa shalei bidei adam, a window or an opening made in the wall, not by human hands. Kegoin shechararuhu mayim. Oh, don't have a picture of it here, but let's just say, okay, water would make this hole. Today, this almost couldn't happen, but in olden times, the walls were made of clay, earth, whatever it is. So after a while, the weather comes, the water beats on your wall, and before you know it, you have an opening. Or you have a weasel, a rodent digs his way through your wall. The biggest curse of today, right? You have termites in your house, you're done. You have mice in your house, rats in your house. This is the worst. But in those days, this was common reality. So you might find in your house one day you might find a window dug out by a rat. Or it was eaten up by malachas. Either it means severe dryness or severe moisture. Two different opinions. The point is, you find a crack in your wall, and then there's an opening. Or you had an open space with there's a word for this, like it was stuffed. Because if you leave an open window, then it's very possible it's going to get very cold when it's cold outside, or very hot. Not a covering, but it's like they used to actually put it into the wall, like a stopper almost, because to fill the hole. Like, kind of like a cork for a bottle. Yeah, so there was a stuffer for a window. V'nital hapkak. And now you took out the stuffing. Or there was glass. Bit of an advanced window, right? They used to have, like today, everyone has glass in their panes for the windows. But you had some glass in there and it broke. So now there's a hole. So this window, which was not made by humans, has a bigger amount. In order to be classified as a window, it has to be miloi egroif. Miloi egroif, the commentaries say, is 1 1/3 tefach. So it's bigger. 1 1/3 handbreadths. V'hu kireish gadol shel adam. Yeah, I know today egroif means a fist. But in the commentaries it means it's the amount kireish gadol shel adam. It's the size of a big human head, which the commentaries estimate to be 1 1/3 tefach. V'hu, says the Rambam, when do we say this? Shalei chashav alav letashmish. If it's just a hole and you've never considered actually using it. Avalim chashav alav letashmish. The moment you change your mind and now you designate this hole, even though it was made by a rat or made by natural circumstances, like, you know what? It's a nice window. Let me use it. Once you think you're going to use it, shiura bepeseach tefach. It changes to the category of the first window. Tashmish window, the usage window, which is one handbreadth or one handbreadth. Chashav alav lemoyer. If you decide, hey, I want to use it for light, shiurei bepunyan. It changes the amount to the coin amount. Shahamachshava kan kemaisa. Because over here, in this scenario where the window is made by itself, just the thought is like an action. When a human being actually makes the window, so your thoughts don't matter. You have to actually reach the amount. But when natural circumstance makes the window, and now you're considering what to use it for, the minute you have a thought, that already becomes susceptible to bringing impurity in and out of that window. Halacha gimel moir shehischil l'sasmai v'lo hispik l'gamre. You have a window, the third type of window, this one, the moir, the light window, and you began to seal it, v'lo hispik l'gamre, but you didn't have a chance to finish sealing. Maybe you didn't have enough clay to finish the sealing, or your friend called you over for a conversation. Look at that, today is Friday, okay? So you're doing construction on a Friday, and Shabbos comes in, you didn't have a chance to finish the window sealing. And there's a little bit left. So even though it's less than the proper amount for a light window, if there's still remaining 2 finger breadths by a thumb breadth, a tiny, tiny amount is still remaining, it still can bring in impurity. This is the one exception, where you have a window that's even smaller than a third by a third, because you didn't finish sealing it, and it's already bringing in the tuma. If even less than that is left, then it's considered fully sealed, and you have no problems of tuma going in and out of the room. You have a big window that's made for light, and you had a screen in it, netting. Okay, not like today's window screens that are super thin and super professional. More like a reed screen. If one of the pockets of airspace are as big as a coin, that's considered a big enough hole. Because the size of a window for light is a third of a tefach by a third of a tefach, even though you filled it with the screen. But if in one of the places in the screen there's a pocket of air that's that big, you're done. If the holes in the screen were super, super thin, and no individual one is the size of a coin, that is like a sealed window. Now the Rambam just said this yesterday, at the end of the chapter, that if you have less than a space, it's sealed. Why is he repeating it? So the commentaries say, yesterday the Rambam was talking about the power of obstructing Tumah. Today the Rambam is talking about a different element, that you might think, maybe if you have multiple pockets, the pockets should all combine to the size of a coin. No. Each individual pocket functions on its own. If they don't meet the right size, you're good. Same thing if you have a window, a bigger window. It's meant for usage. And you have different types of screens. Svachos, the Rambam writes, are screens that you would put in a storage container or a storage room. Refafos was like a little lattice netting they used to put in like summer homes. They had these, in those days, they used to build like structures very, very thin or open to live in the summer. And they put up these little nets, these little screens to stop bugs or whatever it is. So that's svachos or refafos. So same thing. If there's one pocket in that screen made out of these branches that has 1 tefach by 1 tefach square, maybe you might see it brings in the tuma, it lets the tuma exit. If not, it's as if it's shut. If you have a window which is open to the air, shiura kepunyan. Okay, the Rambam repeats the principle just to make the next point. When a window is open to the airspace, to the outside, the amount to let tuma out and in is the small coin. Because small window like this is only made for light. Now what happens if you did construction? Happens sometimes. You have a wall that used to be the outermost wall of your house, and the window was open to the outside. Bana bayis chutzala. Now you built a room next to it. This might be a case to help you imagine it, okay? Here's the window. Now watch what happens. It's open to the outside. Boom. You put up a room next to it. And now it's open to a space that's under a roof. This window becomes under a roof. And now it's a window between 2 homes. Says the Rambam, the rule changes now. Now the window, if it's so small, it will not let the tumah in and out. Now it becomes like a usage window, not a light window, and you have to have a bigger space. one tefach by one tefach. What if you put the window in middle of the roof in middle of the window? So this is not so accurate. I really wanted the house to come up this way, halfway, but he put it this way, halfway. The point is, imagine it this way, okay? The next room was built a little bit smaller, a little bit shorter in height. So now half the window is open to the next room, but the upper half of the window is open to the open air. So the Rambam says, the window actually divides. The lower half that's under the roof, follows the rule of usage windows. One tefach by one tefach is required. The upper one above the roof, open to the air, still needs only a smaller amount because it's open to the airspace. A hole in a door. Doors in those days were not one board. They didn't have the accessibility to make such big doors. What they used to do is they used to take a bunch of slats of wood, right, either lengthwise or widthwise, put them all together, and you made this door. So it made it harder to fill doorways because you had to be very precise with your measurements. Many times the doors didn't exactly fit the doorway. So the Rambam says, let's say you have a hole in a door. Okay, I couldn't make it over here, but let's imagine there's a hole in the middle of the door. Or the carpenter who made the door left a space open above or below. He wasn't able to fill the whole door frame. So now you have a little open space on top of the door or on bottom of the door. Or a person just closed the door, a full door, it filled the door, but it didn't close all the way. It didn't tighten it. And now there's an opening between the two, maybe it's a double door, there's some open space. Or you close the door, you think you close the door, happens to me all the time. I come home, I close the door, or I think I close the door, and then the wind blows it open. B'chol elu, says the Rambam, in all of these cases, these are not considered to be light windows or usage openings. They're considered to be openings that came on their own. And therefore, if the open space was the biggest size, 1 1/3 handbreadths. By 1 1/3 handbreadths, the Tuma can exit and enter in this open space. So if there's a house, if there's a corpse in such a house, with a door opened, it will let the Tuma out if the door is open that amount. If it's less than 1 1/3 handbreadths, 1 1/3 handbreadths, it's like it's sealed. In other words, we consider this opening to be an opening made by itself. Halacha Zayin. A person makes a hole in the wall, but he does it with a purpose. He wants to put into it a reed or a nail to be a hanger for him. Or to watch people. Right? The people watching makes a peephole, makes a hole in the wall. He's going to stand there and watch who passes by his house. Or he wants to have a conversation with his friend. He's locked in a room. His friend's outside, wants to talk to him. It's like, just give me a second and make a hole in the wall. Says the Rambam, all these openings, we consider these openings to be openings for usage, because you're making usage out of it, even if not physical. Maybe you're not putting anything there, but you're going to look out, you're going to see out. So it has the status of the second window, the usage window, and therefore the amount to qualify as an opening for Tuma is 1 handbreadth by 1 handbreadth. If it's big enough, then if there's a corpse inside, Tuma will go out, or outside Tuma will come in. If it's smaller than that, then you're good.